Boom! Covers halftime live Sunday Night Football, NFL Week number 5. Cincinnati Bengals, Baltimore Ravens, deadlocked at 10 points apiece in this AFC North battle. Gonna be honest, guys, it is Thanksgiving Sunday. A lot of folks north of the border here in Canada probably watching this with some sort of remnants of food in their hands. It's been a long day of football, bouncing around family and friends. And so when it comes to having a firm take on this game that has been very evenly played so far and potentially getting to a pick, as we've seen with a few of these, it's going to be a bit of a stretch. And so if you are in the YouTube chat and you want to ask a question potentially about something coming up in week 6, we got a lot of openers. I got a lot of thoughts there. I might be able to, for a minute or two at the end, get to a couple of those. But I'll go through what we're looking at here in the first half and what I think we're going to see in the second half. So first and foremost, the Cincinnati Bengals, with Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator, have been brilliant at managing things from the first half to the second half. In all 4 of their games so far this season, the Bengals have conceded only a field goal to opponents in the second half. That is the second best mark of opponent scoring in the second half of any team in the NFL. The only team that has been better is the Buffalo Bills. What we're seeing them do against Lamar Jackson, at least in the first quarter and a half when Lamar was having a lot of success, was instead of sitting with 8 guys back, which is what Lamar really struggles against, they were trying to generate a lot more pressure. They were bringing 4 guys. A couple times they were blitzing. That's where Lamar and the Ravens are incredibly effective, especially with the offensive line coming back to health, as well as seeing Dobbins back in the backfield. Now, the Bengals, towards the end of the quarter, in the second quarter, started to change into what gives Lamar and the Ravens trouble a little bit more. And that usage ticked up. Now, unfortunately, as bettors and as fans and viewers, Sunday Night Football doesn't come with the live player tracking data from Next Gen Stats, so we can't see exact percentages. But I would have to think, especially with some injuries out at wide receiver, that the Bengals, who have been very good at adjusting in second halves, go to that defensive style where they're only bringing 3 guys, maybe 4 up front, dropping everyone else back, especially now this game is competitive again. That is going to be the adjustment they make, and you can watch for it on your screen to see how far the guys are dropping off the line of scrimmage. So that's what I expect to happen in the second half. On the other side, we've seen the Ravens kind of do the opposite. So Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals have struggled massively. Like the splits of what Burrow is facing when he has cover 2 looks versus cover 1, cover 3, any other coverage, massive. And the Ravens, for the majority of the game, have been sitting in that cover 2 look. And up to that final drive for the Bengals, basically the takeaway in the first half was, well, look how good the Ravens can be defending the Bengals when they have all of their starters healthy on the field. Because there's a lot of references in the broadcast to last season about how efficient the Bengals were against the Ravens. But there were injuries across the board for Baltimore in the defense all season. Now, Cincinnati made a big adjustment in the run game. They've been running a lot under center. If you watch what Taylor is calling on first down, the last 2 drives, they've shifted from all their runs under center to out of the shotgun. And when you see the replays of how deep Ravens safeties are playing, the Bengals were starting a drive from the 20. Ravens safeties were nearly on the logo. I mean, you can run against that all day. You should be able to. And the Bengals late found the way to do that. So now the Ravens have to either make a big adjustment or stick with what's working. And if they do stick with it, well, the Bengals, they're moving the football now the last 2 drives. Not a lot of explosiveness coming from them. And that's kind of the give and take when you're the Ravens playing in this defensive formation. You're not going to have these dynamic Bengals receivers beat you downfield, but you're going to give them few yards at a time, and you're eventually going to try to get off the field. But that comes at the detriment of conceding yardage. And so we know kind of what both of these defenses are going to do in the second half. The Bengals have this history of doing it really well, as good as any other team all season. And then the Ravens kind of been the opposite. They're all the way down. They've conceded the 3rd most points per second half of any team in the NFL. And so that gets really interesting in its own right. With all that said, I think knowing what the defenses are going to do, I think we can play the under at 23.5 in this game. You may be able to find some 24s as well. That's probably, as I look, I'm seeing 5 of the 6 books at 24. FanDuel's 23.5, DK's 23.5. The difference in shading there, FanDuel's shaded under, DraftKings is shaded over. So you can find a 24 out there, but I think knowing what both of these defenses can do, that makes it a bit of a appealing under, as I think the Bengals continue to move it small yardages at a time. And then the Bengals are going to adjust, and sort of we'll see from the Ravens offense what we did the last two drives of the second quarter. These two teams that'll probably fall somewhere. I think 21 is in play here. So if you're getting better at 23.5, I think that's a number that I'm going to look at for the under. We still have a couple minutes left, usually go 8 or 9 minutes. And so I do see a couple questions. Again, these are tough. I mean, we're squeezing out very thin edges on these second halves at best. And so that under 23.5 is a stretch in many ways, but I'll try to get to a few here for week 6 just to fill the last few minutes. Cigar, I hope I'm saying that right. Browns laying 3 points against the Pats seems like a lot, right? Not with that Browns pass rush against the Pats. A lot of their success has been on the ground game. I would say the big name to watch here is Denzel Ward, one of the best cover corners in the NFL. He went out with an injury in that game for the Browns against the Chargers today. So keep an eye on that status. If he's in, I think that defense against the Pats and what they want to do, a very different look for what the Browns are going to have to do defensively against the Patriots compared to what the Pats saw against the Lions. There's going to be rumors Mac Jones might be able to good to go. That high ankle sprain is usually a 4-week injury. It's been 2 and change now. So I don't know if I'm holding my breath to get him back on the field. So not that bad of a number there. What week 6 lines pop out to you? I'm looking at the Thursday night total. There's wind in Chicago, but the system tapers off around 2 p.m. on Thursday. And so with that said, that's a very short number for how bad both of those defenses are. But that wind is going to have a huge impact on it. And so it's a matter of, does that system move out or does it linger around? Right now, it tapers off about 3 hours before game time. So I'm watching that wind. That certainly stands out to me. And then something else that I think has been interesting so far, we saw a difference of opinion. Westgate went Buffalo -2.5. Circa opened -1. Those are two of the books that'll have the most influence on early openers for the Bills and KC. That's obviously a massive game. Difference of opinion there. So I'm curious to see where that number settles. But I thought the difference between the two was quite interesting as well. There was one more from Saudi, Atlanta, and Dallas live dogs next week. Atlanta looked horrendous once they finally stepped up and faced a quality defense in Tampa Bay. Remember, they don't have Patterson, and Pitts is injured as well. So that offense looked very, very different. And so not really high on the Falcons whatsoever going forward. And they're facing a very difficult defense again in the 49ers. As far as the Dallas Cowboys, it'll be interesting to see if Dak Prescott returns. Eagles open right around a 5-point favorite, and that's sitting pretty steady right now. Obviously, Dak's status back in there will change that number significantly. I don't think much of his return is priced into that number right now. So I wouldn't be running to bet either side until we get a little bit more from him. Jerry Jones does a Monday and a Tuesday radio spot, and he usually gives quite a lot away. So we'll see what Jerry has to say, but that'll have an impact for sure on where that number goes relating to the status of Dak. But that Cowboys defense has kind of gotten away the last few weeks with weaker opponents. I got burned betting the Rams against them, but my goodness, did I change my opinion on the Rams after just a couple hours of watching what they failed to do again in moving the football downfield. But this is a very, very different opponent for the Cowboys in terms of class of offense. I think that's going to be a much different matchup. So if Cooper Rush is still starting, I'm very likely going to find myself on the Eagles. But if it's a Dak game, then that number's going to change quite a bit as well. We'll get to two more. We got 45 seconds before we hit the 10-minute mark. PGH Jakes, Bucks -8 versus Steelers. Hard fade Pittsburgh until Watt gets back. Watt's not helping that defense. I mean, obviously he's going to help in some ways, but that defense is horrible. And we've seen him a couple times now look bad against bad teams. We saw what happens when they play a good team in Buffalo. Watt comes back, that's still going to be a very bad defense. Pickett, a lot of variance, boom or bust in many ways. It's a very tough matchup against Buffalo. Now you got a brutal matchup against the Bucks again. So Hard fade on Pittsburgh. Yes, I agree, but 8 with Tampa Bay on the road. Bit of a tall number to lay. One more from John. Should a Packers team be favored by more than a touchdown against anyone right now? I'm big on the Jets offense. I think there's something sneaky there, but this Jets defense is really, really bad as well. And so this Packers defense, I'm losing a bit of hope in there. I had them rated quite high, and I'm seeing this the last 2 weeks. They look really rough. And so it's a question of, can the Packers play fast enough to get past that number? They're playing super slow at the moment. And so that's a big number, but it's a number at home against a very bad Jets defense. Watch for that total. Right now it is at 44.5. That could be drawing some over interest. There's a lot of back and forth with the Packers. Going to leave it at that, guys. Just wanted to fill up a couple more minutes as this second half really, really tough. Kickoff is coming in just a minute. Under 23.5. Real tough bet to make, but we will go with that one. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Chat to you tomorrow night, Monday Night Football, Raiders, Chiefs.